Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news, and amid all the contract drama currently going on with Ricciardo and Piastri, Lewis Hamilton has commented on his own contract due to come to an end at the end of next season in 2023 with Mercedes. He said that he's going to prove the haters wrong, not go anywhere anytime soon, and definitely plans to keep continuing into the future and do effectively a Fernando Alonso in search of Hamilton's 8th world title. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Really helps out the channel. First of all, we've got to discuss this contract drama because Alpine are looking for a driver to replace Alonso. These are the four key candidates. Ricciardo makes the most sense. Gasly is also a possible option from AlphaTauri. Gasly does have a clause in his AlphaTauri contract where if a team higher than AlphaTauri in the standings wants Gasly, he is able to leave. Mick Schumacher apparently also, because Haas might not want him anymore, and then Felipe Drugovich, definitely a Formula 2 driver on the radar of many teams. Ricciardo seems the most likely, returning to Alpine, returning to Renault as he was at a few years ago, but of course that's not going to be cheap for Alpine or potentially for McLaren, we will see here in a second. Now Otmar is not happy at all about this situation. He says that, effectively he expected more loyalty from Piastri to, after all the investment they've given to his career, to stay with Alpine rather than defect, I suppose, to McLaren, as it seems like he is going to do. Of course, Alpine put the tweet out saying they were going to promote him to their driver position. He then said, no, that's not the case. I'm not driving for Alpine. I'm going to go elsewhere. And of course, the elsewhere had to be McLaren. There's no other seat that makes any sense. So Otmar says he's 90% certain that Alpine will go to the High Court and seek compensation. The idea being that because they invested so much into Piastri and they believe that his contract implies that, he should have to stay with them and now he's not going to, they want compensation for that and for the investment that they have put in. As he goes on to say, if the CRB, the Contract Recognition Board, says your license is only valid at Alpine, and then Piastri says, that's great, but I'm never driving for Alpine, I'll just sit out for a year, then you've got to go to the High Court. So yeah, apparently that's what's going to happen. Now look, will the teams, McLaren and, Piastri or Alpine or whatever, actually go to court and go through a whole trial? Unlikely, just because it costs an awful lot of money. They can probably get a cheaper situation by just settling for whatever, but Alpine want something back for the investment they've put into Piastri over many years. Now on the flip side of things, Ricciardo, of course, is going to leave McLaren if Piastri does come in, and we'd imagine he wants to go to probably Alpine as the best seat that's available for him. But of course, it's not the end of his contract, right? Ricciardo is still contracted until the end of 2023, as is Hamilton. We shall see here in a second. So if they were to get rid of him, then they're going to have to effectively buy him out from the contract for the release clause to bring Piastri in. So this is something that obviously either they feel like as McLaren, they're going to get better return on investment with Piastri as a driver, because obviously Ricciardo has struggled this year, or Mark Webber's just done a vintage job and said, yeah, look, get rid of him now, get Piastri in, because it's going to be better off for you in the long run than paying this release clause that they might well have to pay. They're going to have to pay something. Will they have to pay as much as Ricciardo wants? Because apparently Ricciardo's team wants $21 million. He's reportedly set the price as $21 million as his buyout clause from his contract rights. Not exactly sure, of course, what the contract says, but yeah, they seem to believe that a $21 million valuation is what it's going to take for McLaren to say, yes, Daniel, you can go now and have your 21 million, we want Oscar in. Now, of course, there has been situations, I think, with Ferrari in like 2010 when Kimi Raikkonen, they effectively just paid him not to be there anymore and just to sit out a season because they wanted to get Alonso in, or whatever exactly the situation was. It's kind of happened before where teams have paid money to, well, force a driver out, and it could be another similar situation here, right? So I suppose we'll see what happens on this one, but yeah, more drama on that topic every single day. Another big update, actually, because a few days ago we talked about a relatively big piece of news that the 2023 regulations had been effectively confirmed by the FIA. They've been talking with teams. The big one really was the raising of the floor by 15 millimeters, or the leading floor edges have to be raised by 15 millimeters. The FIA initially proposed 25 millimeters, which apparently is what Mercedes proposed. The other teams weren't so happy. They came up with a compromise of 15 millimeters, and there's other things as well, of course, that are going to change next year, generally to try and combat the porpoising problem that, of course, came up at the start of this season, and they've now submitted that to the World Motorsport Council for ratification, and if it does then get confirmed, then we shall see. But every driver and team principal has apparently been consulted. They've come up with what they want to do, and it's going to be probably confirmed in the near future as well. Let's talk Lewis Hamilton, right? Because this, I believe, is the first time in his career where he's going into the summer break without a victory. Of course, he's never had a season without a victory. This season seems the most likely, but then again, even back in 2009, where he had a pretty terrible car at the start of the year, barely made it into Q2. I think he was like 15th or 14th at the first race of the season back in 2009. Eventually, McLaren realized what was wrong with the car. They upgraded it, improved it. He eventually won that season in Budapest, of course, the race where he just came second. And then he went on to win, I believe, one more race that season in 2009 in Singapore, which of course is also coming up in about 4 races time. After the summer break, we go to Spa, then to Zandvoort in the Netherlands, I think, and then to Monza. And then after that, it goes to Singapore. I think that's the way it goes, and then to Suzuka. So look, Hamilton could well, by the time those few races come around, be in position to deliver a victory. But he's very much openly admitted here in this kind of interview with Vanity Fair, like he was really open about, honestly, his thoughts on, Abu Dhabi and like really his career in general, or what he's experienced over the years, but also about the fact that he loves driving. He loves being in a Formula 1 car, like that's where he feels at home, and he feels no reason yet to step away, right? And he says, look, after all the hardship that he dealt with, of course, at the end of last season and even into the start of this year, like look, he's not going to go away anytime soon. He's still chasing that 8th world title. He's still chasing the 8th world title, and that's exactly what he plans to continue to do. This also was mentioned, I thought was kind of crazy. If you guys have seen the new Top Gun film, that Hamilton was apparently meant to star in this as a fighter pilot. He got the call from Tom Cruise, and he said, like, do you want to be in this film? Or whatever happened there. They had a discussion because they get on rather well. And Hamilton was down to get involved in it, but the way the filming was going, the film has only come out this year, but I believe it was filmed 2 years ago, I think back in 2020, or even maybe earlier. But the filming would have clashed with the season that time. So Hamilton had races to win, he had a championship to win, so he had to say, look, Tom, maybe not this time, but maybe another time, get me in a film. So look, obviously he has other interests outside of just Formula 1, but that is still his main endeavour for now, and he probably realises, look, I can only compete in Formula 1 for so long, but all these other things that I love to do, like, I've got the next 20, 30 years to do that if I keep my body in good shape. Whereas he might only have another maybe 5 years in Formula 1, who knows, if he's going to do an Alonso and get to like 42, 43, who knows, right? Hamilton can still be around for many more seasons. He talked a bit about Abu Dhabi as well, kind of his feeling within the car, and at the time when, of course, the whole shenanigans went down at the end of last season. But this was kind of the interesting one from my perspective in regard to what's going to happen this season and the next, because obviously Hamilton hasn't quite had the car this season, but in recent races has definitely performed at a world championship winning level, as of course you would well expect. But his contract expires at the end of next year, so the theory was almost that he was going to retire this season, right? Before this season even began, people were suggesting Hamilton was going to step away and never even return to try and, get his 8th world title this year. Obviously it hasn't worked out, right? Next season could be a different story, but his contract expires at the end of next season, right? And the theory was, okay, maybe he tries next year one more time, and then he says, okay, I've had enough, 38, 39 years of age, I'll go away. That's not what he says at all. He says, I'll be lying if I said that I hadn't thought about extending. You should live life to the max, live the life to the best of your ability, help as many people as you can in the time that you have. I'm still on the mission. I'm still loving driving. I'm still being challenged by it, so I don't really feel like I have to give it up anytime soon. Goes on to, like, even Tom Brady could have kind of talked about and had a few words on, like, Lewis Hamilton here, and saying, anyone can have 5 great seasons, but it's really hard to have 10 great seasons or 15 great seasons. And one of his friends here mentions he has nothing to prove, but a lot more to accomplish, and I think he'll just keep going until the wheels fall off, literally. And Hamilton almost seemed rather insulted that some people would suggest that he was someone who could walk away from a fight. He says, but then again, that's what they would do. I'm built different, he says. I was built for this. It reminds me that some people still don't know me. Even after all these years, people still don't know, so all right, I'll prove you wrong again. So quite the statement of intent here really from Hamilton, saying, like, look, I'm not a regular driver, I'm not a regular Formula 1 world champion, I'm built different, right? This is what I'm here to do, and this is exactly what I'm going to achieve. So yes, 2023 is no longer the finishing date for Hamilton's career. It could well go on longer than that. I still do kind of think that if he does win an 8th either next season or after it or whatever, like, he might just decide, okay, we'll call it quits there. But I think until he gets that 8th, he's probably going to keep chasing it as long as he possibly can, which I think is great news for the sports, because I do think we've seen really over the last couple of weekends since the kind of the experiment stopped on Hamilton's car, that it's still Verstappen and Hamilton that are the 2 best drivers on the grid right now. And I think maybe another battle could be in store next season, or even in some of the races as this season does indeed progress. Obviously his average finishing position this year does not necessarily reflect that. Thought there were some interesting kind of pointers in here about some of the drivers that have finished maybe lower or higher than you might expect relative to their championship position. Leclerc has actually finished on average at 3.2. That's his average position this season, despite being second in the championship. So it does just show how, difficult things have been at times for the Ferrari guys. Another advantage, of course, Red Bull have, I thought was interesting actually how quick McLaren have been this year, because Mercedes pit stops have been rather slow, and they're actually averaging, well, Red Bull are averaging just under 3 seconds, McLaren averaging just over, Ferrari are there or thereabouts as well. Mercedes have got somewhat slower this year, but still, kind of impressive to me that McLaren are actually they've been so rapid this season, right? They're actually the fastest pit stop crew for the first maybe 10 races, and since then Red Bull have gone to new levels again, as you might expect. But yeah, I thought this is pretty cool as well from F1 Stats Guru. This is another thing of note I thought you guys might find interesting. The starting position of every Grand Prix winner, right? So this is going back to the 1983 or even before that, right? Even 1954. This is way back in the day since the inception, really, of Formula One, and which positions have won races. So from pole, 451 races have been won from pole. That's 42% of races. Of course, like, there's multiple elements here. If the grid was randomized, this would look different, but the best driver in the best car generally is going to be on the front row of pole, so they're more likely to win anyway. But this I thought was interesting. 85% of races are won from the first or second row, so only 15% won from outside that in general. And obviously a few here in crazy races further down the pecking order. One set that I thought was interesting here was about 10, 9, and 8, or maybe 10 and 9 specifically, because there's been 12 races won from 10th position, but only 4 from 9th position. So I was wondering whether this could be something to do with the fact that, let's say obviously like it happened recently with Verstappen, right? You get through to Q3, and then you have some sort of issue in Q3, mess up your lap or whatever. In of course, Verstappen's case, he had the issue with his MGUK or whatever it was, and he also locked up in the first corner, right? So it can happen where the fastest driver, fastest car, whatever, gets into Q3, and then, of course, has an issue, ends up qualifying 10th there, and then goes on to win the entire race. You might imagine, though, if that was the case, that you also might see a similar effect in 15th if they had similar issues in Q2, but that doesn't seem to be the case, really. And also 9th, there's only been 4 races ever that have been won from 9th position, whereas there's been 17 races from 8th. So not really sure what it is about 9th position that doesn't seem to be a good place to start. And it seems like everyone in Formula 1 right now is getting involved in this whole photo shoot stuff. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.